I think we're going to war for real.
I'll tell you one little story that I probably have never told anybody before.
We got hit with a NVA sapper company supported by infantry.
It's not easy, and that one was tough, but fortunately it worked out for us.
Welcome to War Stories, conversational military history.
All right, what's going on, everyone? I'm Preston Stewart with Sayre for War Stories, and joined today by Norm Bendiksen. Did I get that right, sir?
That sounds great to me. I'll answer to that.
I like it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. We came across you on TikTok of all places. Not when I started messing around with TikTok a few years ago. The last connection I thought I would make would be to a Vietnam veteran like yourself, but the wonders of the internet, and here we are. So thank you for taking the time out of your day and talking for a little bit.
Oh, my pleasure. Quite a surprise. The path that brought me here through TikTok. My granddaughter said, "Get on TikTok, Grandpa. You need to tell some funny stories or do a funny dance." And here it is a year later, and my first ever podcast. I have listened to a few. I've even listened to a few of yours. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Just guide me through kind of what you want to know or what you want me to say or whatever.
Absolutely. We really like this. It's definitely different than TikTok and YouTube and all of that, but it comes across as being somebody who listens to podcasts. It's pretty personal. You're talking in somebody's ear. They're hearing the one-on-one conversation, and it's what you're doing on TikTok, sharing your experiences, just another way of doing that. And I think it's awesome. I think I'm a big advocate for, in any way, shape, or form, sharing life experiences. Because I feel like I've heard so many folks who wish they knew what their parents did or grandparents did. And you're making it to where your kids and grandkids aren't going to have to ask those questions because you're making it known, whether it's in those letters you wrote or now on the internet. So I think it's great.
Oh, well, yeah, I've thought of that also as kind of something to leave behind. But yeah, it's great. I think I listened to your grandfather's podcast. I was looking for a podcast of somebody in my generation. I'm 81. And he was in the Korean War, which, oh my God. When he was in the Korean War, I was delivering newspapers as a 10 or 12-year-old. And that was the headline in the paper every day. And so, boy, if all the veterans, I respect the Korean ones more than anything. And I remember that he placed his birth in relation to Pearl Harbor. So I want to match that. I can't match his exactly, but I was born 16 months before Pearl Harbor. Okay. So I don't remember much about the Second World War. My father went off. I had a father and then later a stepfather. And my father went off, so that left my mother. She was probably 21, and she was trying to keep things together. So my first 4 or 5 years during the war, World War II, we're talking about, I spent being kind of shuttled around between grandparents and uncles, and even one time in I guess you'd call it a boarding house. This couple kept babies and so forth. I can still remember my crib in the back room. So I must have been only like 3 or 4. He sold watermelons in the front yard, I remember. But the war was over. My parents divorced right after the war, and my real father married a new wife, and I lived with him and his new wife for 3 or 4 years. That, by the way, that my real father, piece of history here, he served on the USS Missouri when the Japanese surrendered on VJ Day. So that was a major kind of part of his life from then on. I mean, you would go to his den and you would find, huge posters of the USS Missouri and all the crew and all this sort of stuff. And he went to all, now look at that. He went to all the reunions and all like that. I'm sorry.
No
I
problem.
should have thrown my phone in the garbage can.
We're ready for it. No problem at all. I always really like those pictures of the Missouri at the surrender because you can see all of the sailors just lining around trying to get a view. And you can imagine how many you can't actually see in the photos that are 10 rows back. Just, very cool piece of history.
Yeah.
I met a guy in Dayton. He's from the Dayton area. He was at Pearl Harbor when that happened. And he was at the surrender in Tokyo.
Oh my God.
Or wherever it was. He had to have been on the Missouri because he had to have been on the Missouri. So he was at the beginning.
Probably the bay of something or other.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was real interesting to be at the beginning when it started, at the very end of it as well.
And then kind of full circle, he was on the Missouri. And just 2 years ago, this granddaughter, the same granddaughter that told me to get on TikTok, member of a choir, and her choir trip was to go to Hawaii, and they were on the USS Missouri, as part of the tour or whatever, and she could actually see her, I guess it would be her great grandfather's name, as listed on the plaque in there. And she was the head major, what do you call it? The drum major, head drum major of the band, and led the band in the national anthem on the USS Missouri.
Holy cow.
Oh, wow.
I have to watch out here, by the way. Sometimes we old men, we tear up easier than you youngsters. So my wife has said, it's okay if you tear up, but just don't let it really flow. So if you hear a break in my voice, it's because of that when I start going over some of this stuff. Anyway, that was my real father, I guess, my birth father. When I was around 10 years old, I moved down to Galveston, Texas with my stepfather. And eventually, by the time I got up high school, there were 5 kids in the family. I was the oldest by far. My stepfather, he is in effect a model and raised me. He was also in the war, but he was in the European theater. And the contrast, he never talked about it, not that he had problems with it, but it just wasn't. And one day I remember I found at the back of a bookshelf, a little box, and inside that box was all kind of medals. I had no idea, medals and ribbons. I have no idea what they represented. I don't think any of them were, silver medals or whatever, but his personality didn't talk. So there's 2 extremes. And I've noticed that in my own life. I have some friends that were in the Vietnam War, and occasionally we get together, and they're talking about the last reunion they went to and all this sort of stuff. And that's never been my thing. I hope that doesn't turn off the military history, but I haven't really ever followed up after that. But I was a good student in school, as you can see by my slide rule contest medal.
Well, and some of those letters are very well written.
As a 21-year-old, I was probably trying to, I was probably trying to woo her, you think? I don't know.
I can see that a little bit. Yeah. But it's very reflective, very introspective, maybe. It was better than the writings I was putting together. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, of course, that's probably kind of phase of life that I was in then, which even got me in the Army, trying to find out who I was, what did I want. I was also always just a skinny kid. But I was athletic, but I was so skinny and tall, I couldn't play on big teams or anything, but I played pickup football, baseball. I was probably the best ping pong player and we can talk about that because that came in the Army. I hustled ping pong in the Army.
There we go.
Oh yeah, boy, we made some money there. Not a whole bunch, but what do they call it? A day room in the Army?
Yeah.
Yeah, a day room where you could go and they had a ping pong table, and I would. Somebody would say, "You want to play ping pong?" I said, "Well, let's play for some money." And well, I've heard about you, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll use here's a book. I'll use a book for a paddle, and that way, 5-10 minutes later, I'd have $5 in my pocket." So that worked out very well in the day room and basic training, and probably into AIT. Okay, I'm senior in high school, and
what year is this, Norm?
Huh?
What year did you graduate? What year are we talking about?
1959 is when I graduated from high school. I was the highest ranking boy in my high school class in Galveston, Texas. Galveston, Texas is an island off of the coast of Texas. So I lived there from 10 years to when I got out of high school and into college. Went into Rice University, which is a real prestige school, and promptly got on scholastic probation my freshman year. My junior year, my next year, sophomore year, I made the honor roll. And then came my junior year, which would be 1961. And I guess I went into this funk of, what am I doing? Why am I here? And feeling somehow that I've got to find my way in the world and somehow get challenged to find out what is my limit. I wanted to know what my limit was. And so I investigated the military, and I didn't want to do 4 years or 5 years or anything like that. I thought, if I could just maybe do 3 years and see how tough it can be. And so I went down to my friendly Army recruiter. They were only 3 years. Now you could also volunteer for the draft then. And you only had to serve 2 years, but you didn't have any control over where you were going to go. And I wanted that, at least that control, because I wanted to make sure I got into something that was tough and rough, because this is this skinny 130-pound guy that, anyway. I was on the bicycle, the intramural bicycle team. I was in shape and everything.
And Norm, when you went to college, what was your goal when you initially enrolled?
I thought I was going to be a math major because that was my expertise, I guess. I thought I was good in math. And that got shaken out of me the first semester of calculus, where I failed calculus. So, but see, I'd never had to study in high school. And now suddenly you're in a university, a prestige university, and lo and behold, you've got to open a book.
Some smart kids there.
So when I came back my next year in college, I switched over to psychology. So I was majored in psychology when I dropped out my junior year. But I was had enough, had to be challenged. So I went to my friendly recruiter downtown, Houston, Rice University's in Houston, and told him I wanted to be in the MP because I figured that was going to be tough and rough, and I was going to be able to test my limits of what I could do.
As a military policeman.
Military policeman is what I was going to be. And I went back to the barracks and told my, not the barracks, look at that. They're dorms. Oh my, already got me on the stream here. See? So I went back to the dorm and told my roommate, Malcolm, what I just done. He said, MP, no, the toughest thing is to be a paratrooper. So back downtown and was able to change and said, make me a paratrooper. And sure, we're making a paratrooper. And that was January 1962. January 1962. I'm on a bus going to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, in the middle of the winter.
Would you have considered it a peacetime army at that point? It definitely wasn't 68, 69, but
yes, I believe so. What was happening then was, well, it was the tail end of the Berlin crises. And they were, in fact, they opened Fort Chaffee, my understanding, and this is what I found out after the fact, they activated, I think it was called the 100th Century Division or something like that. It's out of Kentucky. And they sent that division to Fort Chaffee to open up this World War II base that had been used in World War II to train. And they'd only opened it up, I guess, around 3 months before I arrived in January of 1962. They opened it up, and I read all this in September of 1961. And so these were all reserve guys that had just been activated, and they were going to whip all of us into shape. Ironically, this same Fort Chaffee, I think a little before that, was where Elvis was processed in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. Every now and then you'd see, it probably wasn't Elvis that carved it, but you'd see somewhere on the camp that Elvis was here. He didn't go through basic there. I think he went to some other camp for basic, but
That's funny.
That was a point of conversation. But the condition.
I was going to say, just that, speaking of like peacetime war, do you remember where the JFK speech of "Ask not what you can do for your country"? Well, actually, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
Where does that fit on this timeline?
That would be, now he was assassinated in 63, so that would have been the inauguration speech of 60, I believe. Yeah, pretty sure.
I mean, do you remember that speech?
Oh,
Did
yeah, sure.
affect you?
Yeah. I was, 20 years old. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I could almost still see him. And speaking of course, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, which also helps somebody like me to remember it because that's where I live now. His funeral arrangements, they came, he wanted, or I guess Jackie, his wife, wanted some representation from the special forces because he's the one that, I guess, gave the go-ahead to start whatever we call the special forces now. And so they came to the barracks and said that Jackie wants, I don't know, the honor guard to have some special forces people in it. And they actually picked, I can't even remember his name. I think his name was Sergeant Boozer out of our barracks. I mean, he was already had, I was just a green special forces there then. And but he had some experience, I guess, that was really on his record. And then the legend even goes, and maybe you've heard this legend, but so he was part of the honor guard, and he was standing there, and little John Kennedy said, "Mommy, who is that man?" And Jackie said, "That's one of the bravest men in the world." Now, that's probably legend, but that probably really was Sergeant Boozer from our unit that was part of the funeral thing for Jack Kennedy.
How did you end up in the special forces? Because you were just heading on a bus out to basic training, and then
it took a little while. Well, with basic training, that's probably the toughest thing I've ever been through was basic training because of the weather conditions. Oh my God. I think I even did a TikTok on it, but I mean, the butt cans would freeze at night. You could see.
What's a butt can? I'm not familiar.
Huh?
Cigarette butts?
What is a butt can?
They don't have butt cans anymore. These are coffee cans that were nailed to the end of each bunk with a half full of water. When you smoke, that's where you put them out. You drop them in there. Okay. And of course, you got to clean them out too every day. But
they were inside the barracks and they'd freeze.
Inside the barracks? Did they not smoke?
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, they no more smoking in the barracks. We've got little shacks outside now.
Oh, well, that's a good thing. I never smoked, so it didn't affect me other than probably all the smoke around me.
Sure.
Me or something, but
that's cold.
No, butt cans, my gosh. And of course, they had to turn off the heat at night, I guess, because these barracks were already what? Well, they were only 20 years old, probably. Yeah, they were only 20 years old, but probably the heating system had never been refreshed or anything. So you'd wake up pretty cold, and of course the barracks had community latrines, and I mean community, no privacy at all. So that can be an awakening to young kids.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And when you'd be out in the field all day. Back then, I hope by now the Army has zippers in their trousers. I'm not sure. But there were no zipper trousers. They were buttons. And when you're out and the temperature is in the 20 degrees, and you can, of course, you can't even tell when you're shooting whatever you're shooting because you can't feel the trigger, it just kind of goes off. And then if you unbutton to do what you got to do, you can't button your trousers back up because your hands are frozen. And they all, of course, we'd get breaks at basic training. I guess, what do they do now? Back then, they'd say, light them if you got them. Do they not let you smoke after, between
No, they do at basic now.
I don't know.
I doubt they have, that's a good question if they have cigarettes at basic training. But yeah, smoke them if you got them. That still exists for sure. Take 5, guys. We're
also still all buttons, so the Army technology hasn't caught up with that yet.
Oh my God! No, are you serious? Oh, that's terrible. Oh me. Oh, I got. What was I? Got to get back on my train of thought here. Basic. I was a very good shot in basic. All we had was M1s.
Okay.
And all we had, that's what they taught you. That was your rifle training on the M1. Now, I had never shot a gun before. You got to remember that. I'm just a small city boy that didn't go out in the country or anything like that. And I'd never shot a gun. I was in ROTC in high school.
Oh.
I don't believe we ever went to any kind of rifle range. I know I never shot a gun until I got in the Army. But I trusted the Army to know what they were talking about when they teach you how to shoot it,
Sure.
And I can't remember much of that now, but I followed the directions to the nth degree, and I was whatever the highest ranking thing is, expert or sharpshooter or something like that. Whereas the old country boys, I know how to shoot a rifle, and you don't know how to shoot it the Army way. So that was my
interesting
point of pride that the Army knows how to teach you how to shoot, 300 yards away. My gosh.
Yeah.
Now that's fun when you're back there, when you have to be behind the targets, given the markings and so forth.
They have changed that as well. There's nobody else. We have
automatic, I bet, right?
Almost. There's a lot automatic where the targets pop up and when they get hit, they fall. But there's a system I used just a few months ago where there's a little computer screen next to you and it shows where you hit. so you can make your adjustments on the fly by a computer screen.
Are they still shooting like 300 yards away?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, up to 300.
Where it's just a dot, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't hardly see that.
No. So that's, we had in basic training, I guess because of my ROTC, you know, I knew how to march, knew all of that stuff already. That's all we did in ROTC, I think. So I guess I got to be, I think, a squad leader, pseudo squad leader in basic. I think you're kind of at one end or something where you are the one that can at least hopefully keep your line in the proper cadence and so forth. Basic, and let's see, we're out of basic now. Since I said I wanted to be a paratrooper, well, the next step was AIT. So it was still at Fort Chaffee, but fortunately the weather started to warm up, thank goodness. And there we got into all the AIT stuff. I guess the more weapons, you know, doing the mortar and the machine gun and whatever else. I remember, I guess grenades probably came in basic training. And they scare you so much about the grenade, you know. And I remember, and I wasn't alone, but the first one I threw, you know, it's over the wall, and you're just trembling, you know, and you throw it, and it goes around 4 feet over the wall because you're so scared. But you get over that after a while.
Yeah.
You know, we threw some grenades to play like in Vietnam, Richard McCoy and myself. But we can tell that story later, I guess. So then AIT, what happened in AIT that's noteworthy? It was pretty straightforward.
And what were you training to do there? It was,
well, it's advanced infantry training. I guess it was just kind of, to me, kind of extension of basic. You just pull in more. They're teaching me to be an infantryman, right?
Gotcha.
And so that was just more of that. I think that was the path I had to take to get to Fort Benning, to get into the paratrooper thing that I had been promised.
Yep.
So after AIT, then we're into Fort Benning, going through jump school. That was, I think it was just 4 or 5 weeks back then, maybe the same. It was, I forgot, back in basic, I found out that I could run. The first PT test, and this was going to have relevance in paratrooper school. I found out that I could run because the first PT test included a run. Back then it was 1 mile. I think now it's 2 miles.
Yep.
It was 1 mile. And so we're on 1 mile, and I started running with the whole platoon, I guess, around the track. And it just seemed so easy that I kind of took off, which irked the sergeant completely. You know, Bendiksen, get back here. You don't know what you're doing. Well, I guess I did do, because I maxed out the 1 mile. So then I knew I like to run, and I've kept that out all the way through my life.
Nice.
I even run a little now at 81. But when I got to AIT, I ran just for fun, you know. So when we got, this is all leading up to when you go into jump school, where all they do is run. Well, that was nothing to me. I would run. You'd have your morning 2 or 3 mile run, and it was just so easy for me. And then the sergeant would yell back, and I still remember my number, 262.
Wow.
262, you're having too much fun. Get down and give me 30. Which of course meant that then you had to really run to catch up. but he kind of smiled every time he'd say that, he'd do that, but that didn't hurt. At jump school, the barracks were 3 high. The bunks were 3 high.
Oh,
and
wow.
Mine, you're around 6 inches from the light, and you better remember you're 3 high, because when you wake up suddenly in the morning, you don't just ease down to the floor. But attrition, cut down pretty quickly.
sure.
Needing that many bunks after a while. I think I told the story probably on TikTok of this one guy that was like Atlas, but I guess he was scared all the time. When we jumped out of the 30-foot tower, I don't know whether y'all are familiar. Have y'all been to jump school? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Been a couple of years,
yeah.
but
well, you can catch me then if I misspeak now. I don't want any.
Well, there's probably a
valor
difference. I think that there's probably a difference between what we went through and you went through. So it's interesting for us to hear the nuance.
Oh, what are you talking about? Time or rank?
I think probably the attrition rate for one. I think when we went through it was probably injuries primarily. It
Oh.
wasn't falling out and lack of motivation or just getting washed out despite trying your hardest. That, in my impression, is not necessarily the case. It was someone breaking a leg, an ankle, that sort of thing.
Oh gosh, okay. Well, yeah, I have a story on something that happened at jump school, but this one guy in our barracks that, like I said, looked like Atlas and everything. And we get to the 30-foot tower, where you going down the, what do you call that? Like a guy wire or something.
Yeah.
You jump off and you're supposed to go through the 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever. He could not help himself. Every time he would jump off, he would holler, "Geronimo!" And he could not help himself. I don't know. And this went on. And within 2 or 3 days, his bunk was empty. I guess he just had some kind of, he could not help himself. In jump school, brought to mind what Sarah was saying about, obviously, the officers in our jump school class. We had a captain going through with us who was a little older. I guess a little older, meaning we were in our 20s and he was probably 30, probably. And and it was hot. I don't know whether I told you that, but this was June or July, and it was super hot in Fort Benning, Georgia. They would stop you every 30 minutes and send you to the salt tablets. Now, I think that's been discounted by now, but boy, you had the salt tablets. And you had to run everywhere. You had to run. I don't know if that's still the case or not.
That is still the case, yeah.
Okay, you had to run. Well, sad story. This captain collapsed one day. We're on a course or something. It wasn't out on the street or anything. And he collapsed and died of a heart attack.
Holy cow.
Yes. And everything just stopped. And nobody moved. I mean, we were in rest stage for probably 2 or 3 hours. And then for the rest of the day, we were told, don't run. And if they caught you running to the next station, then you had to drop and do push-ups because you were supposed to walk to the next station. I think that was just, that was terrible. The instructors, of course, I'm sure, must have really felt bad, but that Sarah reminded me of that when you said you got broken legs and stuff like that. Well, they can heal.
Casualty. Yeah. But did the guy died? The captain?
Yes,
heart attack? He
He
died.
was the captain, I guess, like I said, he must have been in his 30s, and maybe that's, of course, back then, they didn't detect heart conditions as well as they do now.
Sure.
I had a heart attack about 10 years ago after a 3-mile run. But that's not part of the military, right? Military history.
It is a part of life, though. Those type of things.
Well,
I was actually down there I was down in Fort Benning. I was there from January till October, but a big part of it was the sun. I mean, I was in Ranger School in the summer, June, July, August.
Gosh.
And that was, I mean, I remember doing, this would have been like end of July, doing just like jumping jacks in life jackets. And I just thought, I'm going to have I'm dying right now. Like there's serious problems with my body. And like I wrestled in high school, was dehydrated before, sort of went through that gamut of, but that was the worst almost the worst I've ever had it when it comes to heat. And I had many friends, great friends that I like for years, just the best soldiers, officers, or whatever, but they became heat casualties. One friend that, you know, they did a thermometer, he fell out, you know, they stick a thermometer up your butt and he was 105 degrees.
Oh my God.
So it's like, that's up there for, that's like, you're going to die almost. So
especially
to that reason, like, and they have, and now they do they have like heat index type things where they'll put a flag up, like a black flag means, no running. Not only no running, but you got to unblouse your pants and roll them up, roll your sleeves up, you know, undo your collar. And it's like, we're doing minimal training if possible because of that sort of threat of the heat itself. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe that captain way back in 1962 may have been just one small part of getting the Army maybe toward that direction, because I'm sure woke some people up.
It's the hard lesson learned.
Yeah, I agree. Well, in jump school, then we go to in jump school, you got the, what is that? How tall are those towers? 250?
I know, yeah. That's what everybody thinks about with jump school. So the 30 foot towers that Norm was talking about, you jump out with a harness on. And it simulates the parachute kind of opening. So say it's 100 feet at a diagonal, this cable, and jump out, and your chute, if you will, catches the cable and you slide down pretty fast. But yes, the 250, I think, foot towers, they're just the towers. They pull you up with the parachute and then you drop. I think that's what people think about when they think of airborne school.
Yeah. Well, I had a story on that, and they took us first put us in the stands to explain what was happening and everything. And you see the big towers there in front of you, and you're all in these little football stands. And they were demonstrating how your chute can open in that short a period, and I thought they were using a reserve. I think they were using a reserve. I'm not sure how they would open it, but somehow they had some kind of mechanism that would open the reserve. But I think they were showing that, that chute can open within 250 feet. So you're going to be fine. So they have it up there, and then they release it. It does not open. It hits the ground, bounces 10 or 15 feet up in the air. And I promise you, this is true. At least 6 or 7 guys get up out of the stand and walk over to the table and say, where do I sign to get out of here? And they were set up for that. So to this day, I don't know if that was a stunt. I've asked people, via TikTok, do they still do that or something? And I think I've gotten replies back, no. But I don't think I dreamt that. I mean, I couldn't make that up.
Doesn't sound crazy. I think when I went through, it was in 2007, the overwhelming focus was everything works. It works, it works, it works, it works, it works. So I don't think they would have at that time, tried to show, but there's a possibility it doesn't. But I can see it.
That's, when did you go?
2007.
2007. So we got about a half a century. May have been a different army back then.
Things could have changed, maybe.
Go back to your shooting point, though. The whole essence of that is trust your equipment, trust your instruction, be humble, listen, learn, pay attention.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a good message, because it has to be trust your equipment, because you're putting your life into the hands of the rigger packing the chute and the pilot flying, all that sort of stuff. Your instructors showing you how to fall. Because the people that don't listen, I mean, it's like when you're falling, you're supposed to look at the horizon, don't look down, but you want to look down really bad to see where the ground is. But those that look down will snap their legs, because they straighten them and they're ready. They get ready for it. And that natural thing is what snaps the legs. It's not paying attention to the instruction. So I would feel, if I'm betting, I would wager that that parachute was supposed to open.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll never know. Trying to think. Well, then then of course the next week, I think, when you make your jumps, and that's beautiful to jump. In jump school, I guess you got the same instruction about what happens if your chute doesn't open. You're obviously supposed to pull your reserve and everything, but if you jump out and somehow you get caught on the wing, do they still give that? Not the wing, the tail. I don't know if they still give that instruction about if you get caught on the tail, then you're supposed to put your hand on your helmet to know that you're conscious, and they will cut the, what do you call the cable? The rip, no, what do they call
risers?
It? The thing.
Static line.
The static line, golly, mental block there. They'll cut the static line, and then possibly you can free yourself and go on down. And if they don't see your hand on your helmet, then they'll assume you're unconscious. And the only instructions there was, we'll do our best to land the plane. Now you're laughing. That's changed too. What do you do? What do they tell you?
I don't remember hearing that block of instruction. I feel like it would have stuck with me if they talked.
Because that sounds horrible to plan for that. Because it sounds like the plan is to not be unconscious. So good luck.
As you bang against the tail.
Wake up. That's the plan. So no, I don't remember that. So they must have been able to fix that problem along the line somehow.
Or different aircraft too.
Could be, yeah.
Different static line hookup. I don't know. I think ours was always the breaking of legs. Don't forget the reserve. Don't panic. That sort of thing. The cigarette roll. Do you remember that? Where it gets twisted and doesn't fully open.
Now, what do you do?
That's what I remember.
What do you do if you jump and you land on the top of another chute? What did they tell you there?
I can tell you, I did that.
You actually landed on the top of another chute?
Myself and another guy on our third jump, I think, swung into each other's canopies.
Oh, good.
So we had the yo-yo effect, where it was that the bottom parachute would steal the top parachute's air, and you would just yo-yo all the way down. Yeah. They said grab onto the guy and fall under one chute.
Okay,
and we did that, but it was not enough time to think, not enough time to be scared, and next thing you know, you're on the ground.
Yeah, the instruction I'm talking about is if somehow you land on top of another chute, which would cause your chute to collapse. And so the instruction there was double time off his chute. So I hope that works, although I think his would start to collapse too. But none of those things ever happened on any of my jumps.
There we go. So successful airborne school.
So, yeah, we're fine. We're fine. And I think we have made it through jump school here, haven't we? I think. Okay. Now, special forces. Well, jump school, to me, after I finished it, looking at my choices, was, hey, I'm either going to go to the 101st or the 82nd. And I guess I didn't want to be in just, I don't know, a unit that, to me, just a big mass of people or something. I don't know a way to say it right, but that didn't appeal to me, to be just in that kind of organization. So fortunately, the Special Forces had a table set up or something where you could go by and they'd, I guess, give you a pitch. And that looked good to me because of the small team environment, and they're going to teach you something. And by this time, I wanted to be a little more intellect involved or a little more thinking type something involved. And so I said, you know, I'd like to sign up and be a medic. I don't know whether I was thinking of medical school or I don't know what was in my mind, but I didn't want to just be a paratrooper then.
Sure.
101st and 82nd. So I signed up and found myself at Fort Bragg. I thought the Green Beret was cool. You know, I had been taught that that was cool because back then I think it was the only unit that could wear a beret.
I think so, yeah.
It had a point of distinction.
Did you know what you were getting into? Like today, somebody that's 18 and goes and signs up, they've heard of Special Forces. They have an idea in their mind, but it was relatively new at that point.
Oh yeah, I had no idea. I never heard of Special Forces. And back then, when I finally did learn a little about it, right then, I guess, primarily, it was not, to me, it seems like it's evolved now into this, I don't know, elite, well, it is elite, but kind of gung-ho, we're going to go wipe them out, Rambo type. Rambo, you know, you see Rambo. And I didn't see it back then there. It was, we were a small team with our specialties, and we were going over, and by the way, they ask you, did you want to go over? I mean, over to Vietnam at that time. Only people over there then, the way I understand it primarily, was just the Special Forces. You know, there were teams spread out throughout the country. But our job was not to go wipe out people or anything like that. It was to actually build from within. We'd go to a small village, help the economy, pour money into the economy by hiring people. We trained a local militia. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, I guess, to the
yeah, it's fine.
To the purpose of Special Forces back then. Now it seems people think of it as some strike force going in to rescue somebody or something like that. So that was my picture of it then, and that was the picture. That was, yeah, you're isolated in a small village and everything like that, but and you do fighting too, because you're supposed to kind of make sure your area of influence is as clear as, you know, make it hard on the VC to get established.
Were those guys that were recruiting and then doing the training, had they been to Vietnam already?
Very few had.
Sure.
I can remember because, you know, the places we went, we were only like maybe the third rotation in these camps. And so I think I went over in 64, I guess there were maybe some camps for sure in 63, obviously, but maybe in 62. I don't know.
Not very many. So if any of the instructors or trainers had been, it would have been very few.
Now, our instructors and trainers, some of them had been other places and had been, I mean, these were the top notch. I think I've mentioned this before, but Sergeant Berets, he was our top sergeant. I guess he was Major Sergeant. I get my ranks mixed up on our team. You know, he and our Captain Thomas Blagg, you know, worked hand in hand. But Sergeant Berets had parachuted on D-Day in Normandy. So
that's some experience.
20 years before. So I guess he was probably in the young 40s at that time. But that was the head sergeant on our A team.
Wow.
And that kind of reflects the caliber of some of these team members that I had. this green, never been in the Army exactly 2 years or something,
I would imagine Korea vets
there
as
were,
well.
yes,
Plenty of those.
See, I wish I could remember the careers of all of them, but there were just, I guess, 3, quote, youngsters. But I guess we can get into that. I feel like I'm going left, right, and every now and then down the center.
I think it's tracking along just fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm curious what the Special Forces before we get to Vietnam, which is, that'll be its own interesting experience. But what was the Special Forces training back then? Like,
okay.
It had to have been difficult, washing people out, and then the intellect involved, as you mentioned, because that's the piece.
Yeah. Well, of course, I was on the going down the medic path, obviously, and so it was the medic path was like, I wasn't at Fort Bragg until the very end. The first phase of the medic path was to go to Fort Sam Houston and go through just the basic first course of being a medic. And so you were mixed in with everybody else, some people that couldn't like the sight of blood and all this sort of stuff, and yet they were signed up to be a medic. And that was just pretty like first aid practically.
Sure.
At Fort Sam Houston, it came due that we had to do a jump. It's a little sideline here. And there were around 20 of us there going through the medic to be Special Forces medic. And they took us up, and it was a windy day, and they were going to drop us over this abandoned airport. And it was going to be in 2 passes. I was in the second pass, so I did not jump, because the first pass, they jumped and landed on the runway, and the wind it started, dragging them across the runway. Now, fortunately, I guess it must have been cooler part of the year. They had field jackets on. Second pass, didn't jump, so I couldn't claim to fame. But when they got back to the base, these guys had been on the first pass wearing their green beret and their shattered, torn field jacket, strutting down the PX,
Time for some new clothes.
Oh, yeah. Who are those? Those are trained killers, right? Yeah. Oh, one guy on our medic team, going through the medic training with a smoke jumper in a prior life, and his only comment was, "I was looking for a tree," just so he wouldn't land on the runway.
Yeah.
And he knew how to jump. I digressed. So we had Fort Sam Houston probably for around 6 or 8 weeks. And then we went to Fort Campbell. I think you're familiar with Fort Campbell.
Yeah.
At the hospital there. And we spent time there a week or 2, like on every ward, just working, learning everything we could on every ward. I remember this. Oh, that's where I first did my suturing. You don't want to be an ER on payday. Well, maybe
I like where this is going.
The different caste system, but on payday, all the young bucks, their paycheck is gone because they're drinking it away, and they all show up in ER from fights or automobile wrecks. And this one guy comes in, and he's so drunk. But he was my first suture job. The doctor, they're coming in like crazy. So the doctor just shoves him and me in a room and said, "Sew him up." He had a big gash across his head, and I'd never sewn anybody up. I'd sewn up, dummies and dolls. So that was my first suture. Somewhere out in the world, if he's still alive, he's got an ugly scar.
I was going to say that's going to leave a scar too.
Yeah.
Oh, but
Oh, wow.
it was sad on another ward at Fort Campbell where these kids, I call them kids, they're all daredevils. And so, you know, 2 or 3 of them on that ward paralyzed, you know, from the neck down, and having to care for them because they jumped off a bridge into a dry creek or something.
Jeez, yeah.
And that is so sad, you know, but that's what they did. After Fort Campbell, then the last bit of training is back to Fort Bragg. And I wish I could remember the links of this. This would be in 1963. I don't know whether it was 6 weeks, 8 weeks, seemed like it was at least 8 weeks, but there was a lot of classroom training and a lot of hands-on with something called the dog lab. Remember, there's no online or anything like that. They hand you a Merck manual. The Merck manual, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of encyclopedia of every type of illness or injury or whatever that you can have. And so that was our Bible in the Merck manual. And they taught you a lot of pharmacology. Fortunately, there was not that many drugs back in 1963, just 3 or 4 antibiotics. And but then the dog lab was where you learned your hands-on trauma using your dog. And I, of course, that's very controversial and everything, but I'm here to attest, and I love dogs. I have my own dogs all my life, but that helped save some lives in Vietnam. When you had already done some of the hands-on stuff that they were teaching you. So, but they had to keep it secret. It was a secret. I think they've switched now to, I've heard they switched to pigs. And I guess goats. You can get by with pigs. Nobody loves pigs that much.
It's a tricky area because we've got some pretty incredible dummies now. Plastic and rubber and all of that. But
yeah, sure.
As great as those are, there's always, you know, not having been a medic and not having worked in medicine, I'm sure there's always say you're treating a gunshot wound on a dummy, it's probably going to be cleaner and more clear cut than what you would run into in reality. If it nicked a bone or caught an organ or something, you just can't replicate that as easily in the ways that are life or death. So yeah, controversial, but I can understand it for sure.
Yeah. And then that was pretty hard training there, but then you're officially, I guess, a Special Forces medic. And then as far as Sayre asking, I think generally about the other training, we had field training, I can remember long walks, hikes, marches, nighttime. Remember walking through some swamps that I'm sure I wouldn't get within 100 yards of in the daytime. And then eventually we had our full team together and they put us out in the field, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, and going through problems and exercises and so forth. And I don't remember a lot about what those were.
Was it
do you remember, I was going to say Robin Sage. Do you remember that? Anything called Robin Sage?
Robin Sage?
That would have been Robin Sage, where you guys like had to mock up guerrillas and G Chief. It was like Camp McCall in North Carolina. I don't know when that started. I know that that's a thing now, but I just don't know when that came to be.
No, I don't remember that. We also had some language training. Vietnamese is a very hard language. I never learned how to say, I can't say it now. There's a grenade under the chair.
It's an important one.
That's an important one. I remember grenade is Luan, I'm pretty sure. And I remember that doctor is Boxy, because they called me a doctor when I was over there.
Yeah.
Night guard or night patrol around the camp, and the Vietnamese would laughingly ring out, Oxy Ben, as I walked around the camp. But I don't remember, Sarah. I think I remember what you're probably trying to describe, I guess. I don't remember marking up. But remember, maybe that was more, our mission wasn't so much to go, I don't want to say go fight. Obviously we were fighting, but it wasn't this, again, the Rambo analogy. It wasn't any of that.
This is also an interesting time in Army history, though, Norm, because your training and then going to Vietnam and coming back, that experience would have shaped training for the next decade, and based on the real experiences in Vietnam. And then the Army would have taken that and continued to adapt it. So, especially at this time when the special forces are so new, trying to figure out exactly how they're going to be used. I'm sure it's changing constantly.
And I would say, like, Norm, the description that you of the Green Berets, what you described, that was my picture of it in the 90s as a kid, all the way up, even through college, I think. I was never in, but I do get the sense that it's more direct, like, the fighting. I think the War on Terror has shaped it in a way, because I do think it was more preserved. Lots of peace were in the 80s and the 90s. And so they were used like in those small teams, go into some place in Africa and training the rebels there and things, overthrow a government. That's what Robin Sage is. It's a mock, train a bunch of guerrilla rebels to overthrow the government.
Okay.
And that's what it is. So that's a part of the training now, is what they do. I got to play the guerrilla as a cadet. So it was fun for me. I was like 19. It was my first Army thing. I did ROTC at Ohio State as a freshman. And then my first Army thing was to play a guerrilla for the Special Forces students coming through in North Carolina. So I was just, I was going to play with guns and wear the night vision goggles and just soak it all in. So it was like camping for me, but I was just curious if you went through it yourself.
I can't imagine the technology they have now, we're in our Vietnam camp. I mean, the technology was our radio guy. I think he may have been tapping Morse code, the end of day report to headquarters.
Wow.
There was no contact, no internet, etc.
You guys
what was that like?
I
was just going to say
isolation, you mean? Or
no, you did get trained up. You went the medic route, obviously lots of training to get there, and you've been nothing but training, basic, AIT, jump school, then right into Special Forces, which is its own animal, probably as long, if not longer, than everything you've already done. You finally show up. Like, what does that look like? Vietnam is on the cusp, or they're already there. There's whisperings. Like, did you know you were going? Did you volunteer? Or like, were you eager or apprehensive? Just describe sort of that.
I was eager
going on.
I was eager, but a lot of that eagerness was probably built on ignorance. I probably wasn't that aware of what the situation was or what Vietnam was. I mean, not complete ignorance. To me, it was just a continuation of what I wanted to do to, quote, experience life, improve myself, maybe, I don't remember thinking about it as, oh my gosh, I might not come back or something. It was just something to experience. So I think we sent around 12 teams over to relieve 12 teams that had been there. It was 6 months. The tours were 6 months over there. Landed in Saigon, and then down to Canton, and then our camp. We had camps. These 12 teams were spread north and south, And we had the furthest south location in Tan Phu, down in the Mekong Delta, right on the outskirts of the U-Minh Forest. That's where we went. I think we had to walk overland, or canals. That was probably the place where we got there by canals and everything. And we replaced the team that was there. And unbeknownst to me, I think Nick Rowe had been in the team before, maybe the team before the team, but that was the camp where he was captured. And unbeknownst to me, I just found this out in the past year. He was in the being held captive in the U-Minh Forest, which was right next door, you know. But
what was the situation like? What was like the op tempo, meaning the disposition of the country itself, good guys and bad guys? What was that setting like? And then what was your mission? What were you trying to accomplish?
Well, as best I know my mission, you know, and I'm sure Captain Blagg knew the mission in much more detail than I did. It was to try to control or erase the influence of the VC in our area. We had the militia, which we helped train, and we would go out on, we would get wind of something being spotted, you know, several miles away or something like that. And Captain Blagg would, I guess, design an operation or whatever. And usually our operations were maybe 2, 3, 4 days away from the camp. And we would take, there'd be 3 or 4 special forces of our team that would go with militia of maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 militia guys, you know, young kids, young Vietnam kids. From their side, and we would go search. A lot of these were nighttime, where you just go, hopefully set up an ambush, and you just hang out in knee deep in some canal someplace, hoping somebody came by. I was on several of those. Nobody ever came by when I was on one of those operations. The only thing that came by were the leeches that were now. Usually, a lot of times the Vietnamese militia would break radio silence, and that kind of ditched any hope of catching anybody going by. But those were the operations. There were some daytime operations. I think I highlighted one of those where Sweeney saved my life. That's the title of that one. It was across rice paddies with hidden canals, and I fell into one, and Sweeney pulled me out. And we had encountered gunfire then. This was on the Cambodian border. I feel like I'm just hop, skipping, and jumping around.
No, it's tracking.
No.
This was our second camp. We were out of Tan Phu now, and we moved over to the border. They moved all the camps, I think, over to the Cambodian border. And we were a couple of miles from the border, and our job was to keep the, in this case, it would be the North Vietnamese Army themselves, a lot of those. Necessarily VC then, coming across the border. And we had a firefight there when Sweeney saved my life. And I fell in the canal, and gunshots going back and forth. And there was an artillery thing. You're the artillery guy, aren't you? There you go. I don't know anything about this. We had 2 big guns back in camp. The camp is probably going to be no good in distances here. Maybe, can those big guns shoot 3, 4 miles? I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I mean, these were big guns, but I think they were handled by the Vietnamese. the militia or whatever, hopefully trained, maybe not trained is good.
Sounding risky
But
already.
we're up in front, Sweeney, myself, and our militia guys, and the XO, the executive officer, I guess it was probably Lieutenant Cameling. He's behind us, and he decides he's going to call in the big guns. And I don't know about how artillery is supposed to work, but I believe he was asking them to fire over our head, and then maybe you then focus in. I don't know how you focus in, go forward, go back.
Adjust it. Yep, send them the corrections.
So he ordered them, to go way far ahead where they were in front of us. And the first shot comes in, and it's behind him.
Stop everything.
Oh, man.
Man, talk about somebody having a fit. And I think we stopped everything. I think we weren't even going to dare say, well, let's just give it another shot. It might be better this time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's our big gun tail.
Stop it now. Yeah, if you miss by that much, you don't know. You don't want to give a correction because you don't know what they think they're shooting at.
God, we're probably talking 100 yards, maybe.
So, Norm, at this time, did the American people, were they aware that U.S. forces were engaged with North Vietnamese army rather than guerrillas, or is this still sort of hush-hush time frame?
Of course, I don't know what the U.S. people were thinking at this time. I know they finally, everything must have come out when we had the Bay of Tonkin, which was going to be toward the end of my tour there. That's September, August or something. But, I know when I came back, they must have known, because that's when you get your chance in the airport of, hey, LBJ, how many babies did you kill today?
That was happening already when you came back?
When I came, they told us when we came back not to wear our uniforms in the airport.
Really?
Because the escalation, I think, had already kind of started. Up till the Bay of Tonkin, LBJ wasn't sending in any direct troops. Then they started to come. I mean, that's my recollection of the history. I'm not.
So I've got Gulf of Tonkin. No, I think you've got that timeline right. Gulf of Tonkin, August 1964.
Yeah. I mean, we got the word that happened. We were over there.
Did you think that was going to impact your tour? Did you think you might stay longer?
Yeah, you thought about all that stuff. You also thought about do the North Vietnamese have aircraft that are going to start flying over, and we felt pretty good about that. We figured that our Air Force could take care of their Air Force in rapid time, but that they didn't have any of that.
It's still it's an interesting window though, because now we know that led to kind of a creeping escalation.
Yes,
but at the time, I can see how it might lead to an all-out war. What if North Vietnam pushes across the border? To your point, what if they send aircraft down to the south? It was all on the table for a little while.
Yeah, kind of a la Korea, even.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and let's not forget the Soviets. Like, did you have any intelligence or experience with the Russian guys doing the same thing that you guys were doing, but advising the NVA and whatnot?
No, I didn't know anything about that. Now they were, I guess we were bombing them. I think this is when pilots were being captured by the North Vietnamese. I think were already prisoners of war when we were over there, because at one point, the two medics on the team, at one point, my senior medic got taken off the team with another member of the team and some other people. And the rumor was that they were going to go on a special mission to see if they could liberate the prisoners in North Vietnam that had been held. I think, I don't know if that's true, but that was what the rumor was, because he was, they took the two most experienced guys off our team. They were going on some kind of secret mission. One of them was a medic.
So that left you as the lone medic on the team for a little while?
Yeah, for a while, and then they sent somebody else in. And I guess I wasn't very impressed with that stage because I don't remember his name. That's terrible. I hope he's not listening. I'm sorry, I'm old. I just forgot your name.
Well, you became the senior medic, so you were on the bigger and better things.
I guess so. This probably happened later in the tour, and you felt pretty confident by then of what I could do or what I couldn't do. So,
in some of your letters that you're talking about the treatment of the locals, which I think is easy to overlook. We're talking about special forces in the Vietnam War, but it sounds like a lot of your time was spent.
Oh yeah,
serving as you mentioned, the doctor. You were the village doctor.
Yeah. Oh, you'd have sick call every morning. I had a dispensary. I was lucky enough when we moved to our second camp, Don Fook, to actually design and build. I have the local carpenters and everything, build a dispensary. So I had a little pharmaceutical shelves and
wow.
ER room and all this sort of stuff. It was neat. But then you'd have sick call every morning, and there could be 100 Vietnamese show up, kids, mostly kids and women, with all kind of various ailments. You'd treat them try to figure out what it was through your interpreter, because you couldn't speak Vietnamese, and give them hopefully the right pharmaceutical. You'd only give them pharmaceuticals to last a week, because there'd be a black market or just a capture of the pharmaceuticals by the VC when they went home. And also we had a typhoid breakout among them when I was there. And then we had to, one day, I think I mentioned this in my letters, something like 200 shots. And then the next day, 300 shots or something like it, immunizing all the local villagers. But the sick call, it was like a mob sometimes. And that's when I would go through this routine. I didn't have to do it too often once they knew what I was going to do. I'd have to jump up and yell at them, get in line and get the interpreter. And it's still mob. So I'd step outside and pull out my .45 and shoot it in the air, which at least get their attention. And then, tell my guys, my interpreters or my nurses. I had 4 nurses. Well, we're using the term nurse loose, but they were
understood.
Very, very helpful.
Helping hands, yeah.
Yeah.
People, local females that I trained. And it'd start to get in line. It would last for maybe 20, 30 minutes before it would start to get all rowdy again. But
did you ever,
every day.
Did you ever have, you were dealing with guerrilla fighters, which are locals most of the time or some of the time. Did you ever think or treat what might be enemy soldiers, enemy fighters?
Not knowingly.
Gotcha.
Now, every now and then, there would be, I guess, somebody that the Vietnamese, our Vietnamese counterparts could discover was on the other side. And it could even be one of their little militia people,
Mm-hmm.
Or in one case, it was a young female. But we didn't get ourselves involved in whatever talking they did to those people. So yeah, you never knew. Toward that, we're in our camp, fortified and so forth, and lock the gates at night and everything. And the machine gun fortification at each corner, and there'd be a Vietnamese militia guy up there manning the machine gun. And so you always had a risk if he might swing that gun around.
Yeah.
And, blow our barracks off the face of the earth. But our answer to that was our demolition guy had that corner machine gun emplacement booby trapped.
Oh, jeez.
So if that ever started, well, he pushes the button and that whole thing goes up in the air. So we had several booby trap things around the camp just for that. And we also had our last ditch bunker that was real fortified. In fact, when I was over there, there were around 12 camps in there. Ours was never attempted to be run over, but I think there were around 3 other camps that did get run over. And out of the 120 roughly people, special forces teams that went over, 120 men, maybe 12 teams, 10 teams, I think we lost around a dozen special forces. Some of them I did know, because we trained together in other camps that had been run over. But anyway, the last ditch bunker, we were supposed to go in there and then somehow radio to headquarters to wipe out everything.
I was going to ask how
what's the word? Amagon? What's the word? The catastrophic.
Armageddon.
There you go, Armageddon, catastrophic. But, so there were contingency plans that we had to have in place.
Did they use that term broken arrow in We Were Soldiers? I always wondered, is that related to Special Forces at all? Because I know that Special Forces has the crossed arrows. Does that ring a bell at all to you? Broken arrow?
No, what is broken arrow? What is it?
It just means
in the movie they make it. I'm not sure it's used correctly in the movie. I think it actually means losing a nuclear weapon, which would be pretty nasty. But they use it. Okay. Norm, they use it in the sense of an American positions being overrun. So it supposedly is this keyword that everybody stop. We got to go to this spot. I think there might be a little Hollywood involved in that.
Yeah,
but they were there first, and they have crossed arrows. So I just wondering if there was a Special Forces history dealing with being overrun and whatnot.
No, I don't know. I hadn't heard that. Now our camp had a 5-foot wall around it that had been dug out by local most of them little old men that we paid 20 cents a day for getting money into the economy, and they would dig out. We had a moat on the other side because that built the wall, and then barbed wire, and then we had a lot of mines, maybe in at least a couple of sides of the camp, the most vulnerable sides of the camp that had been mined by us.
Were there any of these camps you're in, Norm, where you said you're never at, or the enemy never attempted to overrun, but were there any of these where it kind of raised your hackles, like this isn't a good spot?
No. You mean a good spot for the camp? Camp shouldn't have been there, or this
maybe
is not
it's too
spot to be?
Too close to the jungle, maybe too many enemy avenues of approach. Were there any that were a little more nerve-wracking to be at than others?
No, I wouldn't know. I mean, I was just in those 2 camps, Tan Phu and then Don Phuc.
Gotcha. Okay.
Tan Phu, there was a bridge that led over to the village. We were on a canal. We had a canal on both sides. We were pretty good. We were okay there. Except for the rats. Anyway, I'm talking about Pluto, my rat-catching dog.
I got to hear about Pluto.
Huh?
I got to hear Pluto. No, I said I got to hear about Pluto.
Oh, Pluto. Well, and the other dog, can I say this? I mean, I didn't name him.
You can say whatever you want.
His name was Shitface. So we had Pluto and Shitface. And we inherited those. The previous team had them. But Pluto was the best rat-catching dog you could find. He was kind of like a German Shepherd mix, I guess. I would take him when I was walking guard duty around the camp at night and so forth. And rats lived, we lived in thatched huts, you know, I guess a wooden frame and then thatched huts, and the rats lived in the thatched part. And you'd spot a rat and you would shine your flashlight on the rat and you'd say, Pluto, get it. He would grab that rat. These rats are like small kittens. He would grab that rat, grab it by the nape of the neck and shake it. And that's one rat dead. And maybe somebody's dinner. The first dinner we had with the chief when we arrived at the village to welcome us in to the camp, I found out later was looked like little small chicken drumsticks, but it was fried rat.
All right.
So it would also be a delicacy. We didn't eat it very much. We didn't eat any rats at all. And one time a rat got underneath the mosquito net when we were sleeping, I guess 6 or 7 of us sleeping in the middle of the night, and we hear this God-curdling scream from Domingo. And all of a sudden you hear 6 rifles, safety being clicked off. You know, you're sleeping with your gun. But he suddenly said, no, it's okay. The rat just got under my mosquito net. But that could have been disastrous.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I'd have the same reaction. I'd be the one yelling, screaming if a giant rat. We had mice. Our issue was mice, not rats. And even those, I just...
over in is this Afghanistan?
Mm-hmm, yeah. They didn't get very... Mice. I mean, they were big for mice, but not rats. I don't know that I'd be able to handle rats.
Yeah, these were,
Yeah, there's something grosser and worse about a rat to me than a little mouse that runs across your legs. You don't like it, but it's still just a mouse.
Yeah, and they're pets. You could keep mice for pets. I think my grandkids once had mice for pets.
Yeah, they're pretty innocent.
When you came up towards the tail end of when you knew that you were going to be doing a 6-month tour, were you and the guys counting down? Were you looking forward to going home? Was there any part of you that, I don't want to say wanted to stay, enjoyed what you were doing?
I think what you're talking about is something like a phrase, 100 days and a wake up.
I've heard it.
You've heard that phrase? Okay. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's the phrase I used. I didn't use it over in Vietnam. No, I didn't even start counting down, I guess, till I came back and, getting to the last month. No, I had served my purpose, felt I knew my limits, didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anybody, and ready to go on with the rest of my life. So I left the Army January 14th, 1965.
You don't have to prove anything to anybody except for the people that question your service online. We were joking about that before we started. Yeah. That somebody who somehow heard these stories and thought, I got to see some paperwork to verify that.
Yeah. I know your MOS at least.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you did it all, Norm. I mean, you're obviously a guy that, you don't dwell in the past and all those sort of things and live in the glory days, but I feel like you just have to be very proud to do those things because you asked the question, can I cut it? And you did, you did it all. Yeah. So it's awesome to hear the story, but you got to feel pride, and it's the be all you can be. And that motto came later, but that's what it's about too.
Well, that's very kind of you, sir. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't, like you said, I don't feel like I have to prove anything. And I proved it to myself, and that's what I sought out when I was a, gangling 20-year-old or whatever, long time ago.
Well,
Captain Bragg got a Silver Star when we were over there, our captain. And I wasn't there because I was in Saigon picking up supplies. But that's the closest I came to just never been that angry before when I saw him in the hospital when they brought him into Saigon before they shipped him overseas. But anyway, I digress.
Is that because you?
God, I'm probably using all your time, aren't I? Sorry. Oh God.
Oh no, this is awesome. Were you saying you were angry because you weren't there? You felt like you should have been there with the captain, and
some of that, yeah, some of that. You know, in fact, it happened in the same area where I told you the story about Sweeney saved my life, and the guy couldn't shoot the cannon far enough. It happened in that same area where they and he happened to be on that operations with our number one interpreter. And they hit a big Arvin. Is that what you call it? Arvin, the North Vietnamese.
Sure, yeah.
A big force. And Captain Blagg just about got killed. Lee, our number one interpreter, was with him, and he was killed. And Lee was my friend. Anyway, the captain carried Lee to safety, but was very severely wounded and had to ship him back to the United States. That was it for Captain Blagg. He ended up getting the Silver Star, but they put him first in Saigon, and I was able to go to the hospital and see him. And I'm coming around to the point, I can still feel that feeling of that is where I think I would have lost it if there had been an opportunity to take vengeance on somebody or something, where when I can still feel that feeling 60 years later. Very, very real, but it's the limit, because would have done anything for Captain Blagg. But he's okay. I guess I think he's still alive. I think he's an old man by now, because he was probably 10 years older than me.
Is it Black or Blagg?
Blagg, B-L-A-G-G, Thomas Blagg. I've got living 4 houses down, and Tony Wood is my neighbor. Now you say, who's Tony Wood? Tony Wood is the Marine, I think he was lieutenant at the time, that supervised the evacuation of Saigon on the last day.
Really?
Organized the buses, and he's quite a guy. But you don't want him. He won't stop talking. But I think you look him up, Tony Wood. And Tony.
We would like to talk to him. I mean, we got almost 2 ends of it. You at the beginning and Tony at the end, 2 totally different experiences.
Yeah, well, Tony has talked about it a lot, and his memory is phenomenal. He can tell you every street that he led the bus down. They had to be clandestine in getting some of the Vietnamese out, because North Vietnamese were already at the gate, maybe across the gate even, bringing them to the helicopter on the roof and everything.
Wow.
Well, we have gone longer than we asked you to today, Norm. So I just want to say thank you so much again for not just talking with us here, but for everything you've done, your service, and continuing to share these stories. I think there's a lot of people, this now. There's a lot of people that are very impressed, very interested, and love hearing about it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for letting me use your ear for so long. I talked too long, but thank you.
We're better for it.
Okay.
Take care.